Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. This is episode number 201, entitled How to Make Your WordPress Website Run Smoothly Even After a Year with Alexandru Covtun. It was published on Thursday the 15th of October 2020. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and just the tiniest bit of housekeeping this week, head over to wpbuilds.com/subscribe. Over there you'll find out all of the ways that you can keep in touch with all of the WordPress content that we produce. So one more time, wpbuilds.com/subscribe to keep updated with everything that we produce. Another one is wpbuilds.com/deals. We are approaching Black Friday season, and before we get all crazy and hysterical about that, go to wpbuilds.com/deals and you'll find a bunch of links over there with coupon codes, which are there permanently all day, every day of the year. /advertise if you would like to have your product or service put in front of a WordPress specific audience, a bit like these fine companies have. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by Alpha Hosting. Don't you find it frustrating that most web hosting isn't built for e-commerce? Alpha Hosting's Mercury plan is $25 a month and includes 4 times the resources of their competitors. Our listeners also get 50% off their first 3 months of service. Just go to alphahosting.com/WP Builds. And A/B split test. Do you want to set up your A/B split test in record time, like in a couple of minutes? Use your existing pages and test anything against anything else. Buttons, images, headers, rows, anything. And the best part is it works with Beaver Builder, Elementor, and the WordPress block editor. You can check it out and get a free demo at absplittest.com. Okay, what are we talking about this week? It's episode number 201, How to Make Your Website Run Smoothly. It's quite a long episode. We're talking today with Alexandru from WP Dandy, and this week he goes really deep into how to keep your website going in a smooth and reliable fashion after many, many months. There's a huge amount in this subject, and when I say there's a huge amount, I really do mean it. He spent a lot of time really finessing all of the details. There's a laundry list of things in here. Some of it's pretty obvious, some of it is not so obvious, and so I would say that whether you're a noob to WordPress or whether you are a seasoned professional, there's probably something in this for you. So I hope that you enjoy it. Just before we begin, though, it might be worth mentioning that Alexandru was very kind in that he gave listeners to the podcast a 30% off WP Dandy coupon code. The coupon code is WPBuilds30. There is actually a 30 code limit, so when 30 people have used that code will expire. But if you go over to their website, then you'll find that they are a 24/7 WordPress maintenance and support service, so they can basically take over the running of your website. And hopefully by the end of this podcast, you will believe that Alexandru and his compatriots over there are somebody that you could trust with all of this stuff. And without delay, I bring you Alexandru Covtun. Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. You've hit an interview episode today, and today, all the way from Moldova, I'm joined by Alexandru Covtun. Hello, Alexander.
Hello, Nathan.
How are you doing? How's it in Moldova?
It's hot today.
You have hot summers, do you? We sadly in the UK where I'm based, the summers go between cold and quite warm, and that's about the extent of it. We're not here, however, to talk about the weather. Before we start, I just want to alert you, in case I forget to do it later, I want to alert you to the URL which Alexander is working for, if you know what I mean, the service that he's working for. We'll come on to that possibly further towards the end of the podcast, but he represents WP Dandy, which may be new to you. WP Dandy is a WordPress maintenance and support service. You may have come across similar offerings before, but this may be one that you want to check out right off the bat. But we're here today to talk about a whole load of other things. In fact, the title that we're going to go with for this podcast is How to Make Your WordPress Website Run Smoothly even after a year in brackets. Now, Alexander came up with this title, and I'm quite interested to know why he's put even after a year in brackets. Why have we done that at the end?
Thank you, Nathan. Actually, the problem that I think many of the WordPress WordPress website owners face after the first year is that when they start their website on WordPress and it has no content and it is not optimized to work, for a long period of time, because many people are trying to find themselves in this niche, and in case they just don't pay attention to this. But when everything goes well and the first year passes and the content goes on the website and a lot of plugins are installed and so on and so forth, the website, if it's unoptimized, it start to go slower and slower each time we create content and so on and so forth. So that's why I decided to share some of my experience of optimizing the website from the very beginning, in order not to get into this kind of troubles when the website gets bigger and has a lot of clients or users coming to the website, visitors coming to the website, and so as a result, it causes a lot of slowing down the website and so on.
Yeah. It's a story that I'm sure many of us are familiar with. That feeling of, in my case, sometimes you work on a big website and you really feel the website is slowed down by the conjunction of the amount of queries to the database, the plugins and the theme and what have you. It's all going on. And then when you finally get yourself on a brand new vanilla install of WordPress, it's very refreshing just how quick WordPress can be if there's nothing to slow it down. If it's simply WordPress with nothing else, it's blazing fast on a decent server. Before we begin all that, though, I think it'd be quite interesting and important to establish you as a credible source of authority. So what's your relationship with WordPress? How long have you been using it, and in what guise have you been using it? Do you have a background in making plugins or themes or server-side stuff?
So starting with 2009, I've got open WordPress. I discovered for myself WordPress, and I started to use WordPress from that moment. I do develop themes and plugins for WordPress, but most of them are for my clients because unfortunately it's kind of difficult to maintain a plugin for a long period of time. To make your own plugins and to maintain as it takes you a lot of time. But when you do it for your clients, it's usually easier to do. And so what else I can tell about myself? As I said, I started in 2009. I do create plugins, but usually you won't find, at least till now, plugins on WordPress official repository. But thank you for this question, as I was thinking about releasing some speed optimization as it goes into our topic of today. One speed optimization plugin that in my vision should be different in comparison with those that we have at this moment and should provide some more features.
Okay, should we get into the topic then today? So you've very kindly written me a great big list of the things which you believe any website owner, really from the outset, even if it's day one, ought to be mindful of if they want their website to be, as you've put it, running smoothly. So we could say quickly or smoothly or trouble-free, whatever that might be. So let's just go through them in whatever order you want to pick them off, and we'll talk about why you believe this particular thing is important and what it does and how it can go wrong. So free to start wherever you want. Pick something off the list. Maybe if we just go down from top to bottom, it might be easiest.
Yeah, sure. I think the same. So we'll go from top to bottom, and possibly we'll stop at some points. Because initially, when I decided to put this list down, there were more than 30 points, but I decided that some of them might go inside those points that I have already.
Yeah.
Here, for example, we have a security optimization of this website. For a WordPress-based website, but usually it's a kind of a list of security optimization tasks that might go just in mentioning in one single point.
Okay.
So we can get started with the first one. What I think, in my opinion, is very important for those who are starting their WordPress website on their own, where they have a web developer, is to pay attention to those plugins and themes that go on their website. What I do mean, because just Googling, you can find the list of those 65 plus WordPress plugins that can slow down your website, even though they are good plugins, they have a lot of features, but they might be sluggish. For example, let's say that you are going to pick a page builder for your WordPress website. Usually, people just are paying attention just to how it looks and how it performs. And if they like how it performs for them, they just pick it. But a suggestion would be to pick the one that is less CPU hunger. For example, we know that in possibly some developers might hate me. We know that there is WP Baker page builder. That is very nice plugin and has a lot of features. But if we look into the code of this plugin and when it is installed on your website, it has a lot of JavaScripts and so on and so forth that makes your website load slowly. For example, if you compare it with, let's say, the same Elementor page builder that, in my opinion, looks pretty well in comparison with the previous one. For example, after optimization and compression, it doesn't have any scripts that go out of the delivered minified and cached JavaScript or CSS file. That is pretty good to the website when it loads. So that's why I think it is one of the possibly obvious and for many of those who are listening to this podcast, but it is very important. So it's desired to be mentioned as the first one, to pay attention to the plugins and themes that you install.
Yeah. We, the co-host of the podcast, David Wormsley, and I often have conversations, and we talk at great length about really doing your homework, making sure that you don't just pick a plugin that you may not need just because it is something you desire to have on the website. You know, a plugin which does one thing really well is, I would say, desirable over a plugin which does 1,000 things probably quite badly. And just do your homework. Make sure that you know where the plugin has come from, who's behind it, when it's been recently updated, how often it's typically updated, you know, all of those things. Just get involved, look on the About Us page, find out, go to the repo and explore the comments over there. It matters. It really matters. Yeah.
Usually it even happens, the situation when you might even don't need that plugin. And you might just, I don't know, code a piece of code and to, I don't know, possibly you even might not need to create your own plugin, just to use, I don't know, functions PHP to add some features to your website that won't load and won't cause, I don't know, database requests and so on and so forth. So, but in case you still need that plugin, possibly it would be better to put down some pros and cons and to compare it with some other plugins and to find, because when you are just starting, you won't pay attention to this kind of stuff because you want to start and want to see how it works. But when you start to optimize your website, you fight for each and single byte to make your website faster, because you understand that the way it loads for your customers depends how many customers will stay with you and with your business within your business. So that's why it's important.
Yeah, you're right. It's a really good point. So yeah, do your homework, and then I suspect you're going to tell us next to get rid of plugins that you're not using.
Yeah. The next point is actually this point tells us a little bit different thing is to disable usually I would suggest to all my clients and to all those who are working with WordPress to delete unused plugins and themes that are installed by default in WordPress, because we know that they're basic. The themes that come by default when you install the WordPress website, there are at least 2 or 3 of them that come. And even though they stay, they don't work on your website, they still might cause loading on your website, because they have their databases into rows into the database of your website. And it's okay when your database is small, it has around 3 to 5 megabytes, but when it grows to a couple of gigabytes, each row is important. So a couple of 100 rows, you don't need them to the database. And of course, it depends on the plugin and the theme, because there are some optimized plugins, some unoptimized plugins. Of course, I don't want to say that those that come by default are unoptimized, but anyway, if you don't use them, and don't overload your website.
Yeah, there is no happy number here, is there? There's no 5 is the right number, 7 is too many, 22 is far too many. I don't know what the right number is, but basically, if you go by the rule of thumb, if you don't absolutely need it, disable it, make it go away. There's no point in it being there if it's not being used. It's just another, let's say it's going to slow things down, but it also might offer up an attack vector for somebody else. So yeah, get rid of those things as well. Good idea.
Okay, so the next one will be perform regular updates of your WordPress website core plugins and themes. In my opinion, is also very important in context of the nowadays situation when there are a lot of stuff that has to be taken into consideration when a theme is developed, security updates, and so on and so forth. So it would be better if you would do this. Somebody might think how it might cause, loading on your CPU, of your hosting and so on and so forth. Usually it does. For example, let's imagine that you have a plugin that wasn't updated for a couple of releases, for example, and you have, a better version of your PHP version of your hosting. For example, let's say that you move from the feed 5.6 to 7.2 or 7.4 even. And in this situation, if plugin would be optimized for better loading speed, so it might cause some loading on your website.
Yeah, I think it's become, if you're a single site owner, it's not beyond the bounds of expectation, I don't think, anymore to be asking your clients, if they're maintaining their own websites, to be logging in, once a day, I would imagine, would be the ideal number, really. The more is better, but if you're a person that's managing other people's websites, I think you do need to be updating daily, possibly more, depends how fussy you become, but there's just no excuse with the wonderful options that you've got in WordPress to update everything by clicking a button. There's not much of an excuse, really.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Nathan, because I even recently had a situation when some of my clients were using a plugin that would replace the jQuery version, because we know that WordPress by default, in order to cover all the browsers, uses stable version. I mean, not stable. I'm sorry. I mean the older version of the jQuery, but we know that it has security issues, and so there was a problem that some of the website got hacked because that version wasn't updated to the latest one, and the 3.41 version of jQuery had two issues, and some website just got hacked because of that reason. Of course, small businesses and small website possibly might go well in this situation, because it depends who has interest towards your website. And even some of, let's say that you are in the same niche with some, I don't know, some businesses, and those guys aren't just don't play okay their game, and they might, I don't know, hire someone just to hack your website and just get it down.
Yeah.
So in this situation, it would be better if you would upload and take a look, mostly in the situation when you know that your business goes well and it grows, and it might create some, I don't know, nerves to other business owners in the same niche. So it would be better to pay attention, a lot of attention to your website.
Yeah. I just can't see the logic in not updating things these days. Always a good plan to have a system in place to check that everything is updated, and go and test a few things to make sure it's all working as it should do. But certainly for those people who are running agencies, there's just software to make this so much more easy than it was several years ago.
Yeah. There are some plugins even that monitor the health of even WordPress has a built-in monitoring feature. But yes, of course, it doesn't replace human attention, because personally, I've been in let's say not in a situation, but I know some people that would address like different companies in the same field. I mean, WordPress maintenance, because the previous one, with whom they worked previously, would update like using a plugin like maintenance WP.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember it. So they just at one click they would update the website, but usually it doesn't work this way, and so the website goes down, and it might cause some problems to the clients that come to your website. So my suggestion would be to choose, a respectable company that would do this manually, because everything can happen. And if you do directly to the website, just clicking one click, it's not good.
No.
At least.
Yeah,
but
do some kind of visual check after the fact. I've made use of quite a lot of services that do inspections of websites every, I don't know, whatever I wish, 15 minutes or something, and they go and take image. They literally download a screenshot of the page to see if there's any variation in how it looked 15 minutes ago to how it looks now, or they'll also just download the output HTML and compare one to the other. They'll even check the stack of technology that's sitting on the server just to see if anything's changed. There's so many options to make. Oh, and just simple downtime monitoring. Just have some kind of email alert and there's free services like Uptime Robot, which will allow you 50 sites, I believe it is, for no fee whatsoever. Just no reason not to do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the next point would be to keep your theme plugins lightweight. What exactly do you mean in this situation? The same situation when you just start, it's okay, so you just update those plugins. But when you want to have something that represent your business, a kind of feature that is specific only to your business, so you have to create your plugin or somehow improve others' plugins. In this situation, it might happen that those developers that if you don't have your own in-house developers, you might, ask somebody to develop a plugin. And personally, I've met many websites that hire different developers, and sometimes they try to, save some money and those developers do just a mess with their themes and with their plugins. So it's not a good option if you want to have a well-loading website, because let's imagine that you have just hired 10 developers during a year, for example, to do some stuff on your website, and everyone have introduced, and you even don't have a list of those changes that you have done previously on the website. And sometimes those developers don't know about each other, and even some scripts might go one against another, and it also can create problems. So that's why I think it's very important to keep your theme and plugins lightweight.
Yeah, it used to be that everybody was, well, I mean, not recently, as far as I'm aware, certainly in our community, that everybody would be dashing over to Code Canyon and trying to find the theme with the most features, all of the bells and whistles that the theme could possibly bring to bear. And I think most people who've worked with WordPress for any length of time have decided that's just a race to the bottom, and you're far better off finding a lightweight theme that you trust, that you know is updated, and sticking with it and getting to understand how it's built and how it works and how to troubleshoot it. Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. So the next one would be, the fifth advice would be to minify and combine, compress, and cache the files on both the browser and the server. What's important, I think, those who are familiar with how most of nowadays hostings works. I mean, those that are based on Apache. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
In this situation, so the more resources you use, the more limits you might get to your hosting. Mostly those who don't have their own, VPS and the dedicated servers where they can do anything they want. But in case you are, of course, it is important for the website that are also based on dedicated. But I think it is more important for those who are just starting to use WordPress, and they have $3 to $5 shared hosting. In a situation that your website will go under load. I don't know, you might get some visitors come to your website. So the bigger your website would be, the less the more problems you might get with your hosting provider.
Yeah.
Personally, I've been in a situation when I just started. It was a simple WordPress website, but we know that many hosting, even though they write that it's unlimited the bandwidth and 10 or 20 gigabytes of memory, but usually they limit the quantity of the CPU usage, and the more files, the more scripts and so on for you run, so it might get your website sometimes even to go out of service and so on and so forth. So that's why I think it's important.
There's just so many solutions now for this, isn't there? It's been identified as a problem by the community. WordPress is designed to work on just about anything. But obviously, the bigger your infrastructure, the better. But not everybody can cope with the amount of money you need to spend for big infrastructure, and so you have to go for cheap. And looking again, maybe this is something you're going to do on the kind of hosting level, or you're going to do this with the assistance of a plugin. Again, do your research, find out what it is possible to minify, find out what it is possible to compress. It's not going to be immediately possible to click a button. Well, there are solutions which claim to be able to click a button and you'll be fine, but you can finesse it and tweak it and spend a really lengthy period of time making your WordPress websites work more efficiently. So it's just one of those things you've got to do.
Yeah. So the next question is, not question, but the advice would be to reduce the amount of render blocking resources. If it's possible to async or defer those resources that are render blocking. What's important in the same context with the previous one, with the fifth advice, we know that if you want to promote your business in search engines like Google, you have to pay attention to the requirements to the website. For example, there is a service from Google that tests your website on the loading speed. It's called web.dev. Personally, I like it very much, and it tells you how your clients see your website, and not just how it was previously in. Let me remember how it was called, that service from Google. It's Speed Check or something like this.
Yeah, Speed. Oh, yeah, it's gone. I don't know. What was it called?
Yeah.
It's gone. Anyway, that one.
So in comparison with the previous one, when it would be just emulated how your website is seen on mobile device on a computer. Web.dev now uses real data from the browsers of your clients. So in case you want to be on the top of the competition, you have to pay attention to this. And in general, I would recommend after all the optimization that you do, there will be some after the sixth advice, is to go to that website and to pay attention and to fight for each and single byte, of your speed, your loading speed. There is a very unique, I think, and very interesting resource also that is called GT Matrix.
Yeah, I've used that a lot.
Yeah, that I think in tandem, these two ones might bring you a lot of ideas how and what to optimize in order to be on the top of the competition. Because we know that every business is a fight. It's a fight for, for each single penny and for each single visitor to your website. And the more you time and money you invest in what you do, and passion, of course, the more you get. So leaving just how it is, it won't work.
Yeah, good point. So that's reducing render blocking requests. And then, this one, I'm kind of hoping that this next one that you mentioned is now a moot point. Hopefully most people don't have to worry about this one.
You mean the seventh one?
Yeah, the one about HTTP instead of HTTP. That one. You know the one, yeah.
Yes. Once again, from my experience and from the experience of my colleagues, using of HTTPS connection instead of HTTP1 might be also, not might be, but will for sure be very important for your business. First of all, it's for security reasons, because the HTTP of the second generation not only faster but also secure. And if we know about the security, and most of the time, people just, those who are using WordPress will just go and install because Google shows notification that your website is encrypted and you just want to be as other of your competition are, so you might install. But it is also good for your speed. The requests are going faster for this encryption. Of course, it depends on your WordPress. Where it is hosted. This WordPress, for example. But in general, just using. Let's imagine that you are a newbie in these terms. And just using this. Loading your website from the encryption version will help you save some time of loading your website, so your website will load faster.
Yeah, that's a good point. It seems like only yesterday where we were all suddenly faced with this moment in time where Google was going to downgrade the listings of people over an HTTP session as opposed to an HTTPS session. It was the catalyst which was needed to push everybody over the edge. Luckily, it coincided with something, things like Let's Encrypt, which made it ludicrously simple to achieve. So,
yes, even though that Google says that they don't decrease, in the rankings, the rankings of the website.
Yes.
They say that they don't do this, but in my opinion, and just paying attention to those researches that many companies like Ahrefs,
Yep.
I don't know if I pronounced it correctly, tells that usually those websites that are run through the HTTP connection underperform search results, those who run through the HTTPS.
Yeah.
Usually 8 out of 10 websites that are in top 10 and go through the HTTPS.
Yeah, and also just the big red flags that the browsers throw at you saying, that's not secure, run away. It all helps. So go, and if you haven't done that one, that's an easy one to win on. Yep.
So the next advice would be to maintain a minimal amount of HTTP or HTTPS. Let's imagine that you move to HTTPS requests, so to keep the minimal amount of this request. Once again, it depends where this requests go. For example, let's say that you have a CDN or even a couple of CDNs that go to different CDNs. So in case it's not a script, let's say, or any other file that will be, I don't know, somehow updated over the time, over a very short time. In this situation, I would advise to reduce the amounts by moving those files locally and to load this through, from the website hosting. Even though, in case you have, I don't know, a couple of HTTP requests, of outside HTTP requests, in this situation, it might be okay, but you should also pay attention to the quality of those HTTPS requests, because Google, for example, has some good CDNs, but there are some not so good CDNs. Especially because we're speaking about loading speed and performance, and when every single byte is important, you don't want to know a certain request. For example, I just recently mentioned a file. It was an PNG file for social networks that weighs around 450 kilobytes, and it is loaded directly to your theme. I would say that the guy who created that plugin has no idea about speed optimization.
Yeah, that's a big image.
Yeah, and it is loaded locally. But let's imagine that somehow nowadays we don't find that many times when it happens, but in the past it was a usual experience when people would load it. I don't know, possibly to gain some juice. Sell SEO. So they would load it from their own hosting. So in this situation, it in general can do a lot of bad stuff to your website.
Yeah.
But of course, it's important when you optimize your loading speed of your website is to pay attention to each and single HTTP request. In case you can move them to your hosting, and for example, your web hosting is optimized by some CDNs that you know that they are good, so I would recommend to do this.
Yeah. And then you've got a couple to do with images, optimization and lazy loading. Yeah, good points.
The same obvious in some situation, and for some owners of the WordPress website, but it's worth mentioning because usually people don't pay attention to images. They usually, when you look at a certain website, and in case it has a good web hosting and your database isn't big, you might think that it's okay. It will load, even if it's 2 megabytes, a single image, it will be okay. But it's for you, for example, if you are close, let's imagine that you are in the United States and you are close for the web hosting where your website is hosted. So it might be visually looking okay, but for other people that are far away from the hosting where you host your website, it might be not that good. So in this situation, I would suggest optimizing images. Of course, lossless optimization is a win-to-win. In comparison, I don't know, with some loss optimization, because of course it depends on your previous knowledge. For example, I've personally seen people that are optimizing images into Photoshop, for example. They just are, when they are saving their pictures, they are just saving in low quality thing by thinking.
Right. Yeah.
Just they will save a couple of bytes, but it doesn't work that well. I would suggest the lossless compression. Personally, I like one resource that is called tinypng.com.
Yeah.
And they also have a WordPress plugin, but I wouldn't suggest to anyone to play with this plugin every time when you are, I don't know, uploading an image, because usually this plugin would optimize each image at when you upload it. But once again, in case you don't have an experience in this situation, and you run each and single time you upload an image and you run the optimization, you might get into trouble when your images lose their quality, because even lossless optimization, it can be optimized, I don't know, forever. So in this situation, of course, I would pay attention. Would suggest to pay attention, just in case you have some previous images that you installed. So run just a single time this plugin and leave it to do its job, and don't run it each single time, because you might get with some blurry images that, I don't know, will make your business look very ugly. So.
Oh, does it sort of rerun on the images each time? Oh, I see. Oh, goodness. Yeah, it could really quickly look really bad. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there's lots of services, isn't there? There's lots of plugin solutions for that. WPM UDev have got this thing called Smush, and there's Short Pixel. There's also lots of freely available open source apps that you can download for your Mac or PC, which you can throw images at them and they'll do a fairly decent job. But definitely worth it. Definitely worth it.
Another idea in the same context of image optimization is to use SVG format. I know that, once again, many developers might say that it's not secure to use SVG images, but at least for the front page, I would suggest to use SVG images as much as you can, because I don't know, there are not so many security threats. In case you do it correctly. For example, there are some synthesizing plugins that help you to keep away from different vulnerabilities that SVG might cause to your website. But it helps you a lot, because SVG images, first of all, it is very lightweight as image format. And the second one is, we know nowadays those big resolution screens, when personally, when I look to some website that load, I don't know, the logo, at least logo in the PNG format, and it get blurry, for example, when you have a 4K, for example, MacBook. So it's not very professional. And of course, SVGs are very lightweight and they don't load as images. No. For example, if you go to web optimization resources like GTmetrix and web dev from Google, and you try to get a very good score, you want if you use a lot of PNG or JPEG files, while SVG load into the code and they don't show as images. Yeah. So once again, it might be useful.
Yeah, I mean, they're tiny, tiny little files. Of course, they're not images at all, are they? They're a sort of file format, and so open to abuse. But as you say, there's plenty of sanitizing plugins. I can't remember the one that I recently stumbled across, which I thought was quite interesting. But yeah, there are ways that you can force WordPress to accept SVG images, because of course it doesn't by default, but just be mindful that it's not safe out of the box necessarily. You've got to strip out lots of the metadata in order for it to be safe. But there's plugins for that.
Yeah. Okay, so I think the next one would be lazy loading your images. Of course, it is good when you, I don't know, are a guru and you have optimized each and every single image on your website. But once again, if you want to get even faster, and we know that there are some good standards nowadays under 2 seconds of loading. So lazy loading of your images would be a solution to this situation because, okay, you have stopped those render blocking, JavaScripts and CSS files and so on and so forth, but you might have images on your website and they might cause that same render blocking. So lazy loading would be a solution to this situation to get, because usually it's not the case in most of the situation, of those websites, to get all the images at the same time. Just log on a couple of images that are going the first part of the screen, and you might get some time when loading. And it's also very important, in my opinion, for the landing pages when they have, I don't know, a lot of images on the main page or the home page, and also those shops that have also different images of the products on the main page. It's also very important, in my opinion, and it would save a lot of time, of the loading time of your website.
Yeah, there's also the future looks bright for this as well, because this is now being taken on a sort of browser level, isn't it? We've hopefully in short space of time we won't have to load a bunch of JavaScript to do this for us. Every single image will be handled natively in the browser, and well, let's see what happens with all that.
Okay, so the next advice would be, the 11th advice would be to disable the hotlinking images and files to images and files. Yeah, I think that it is not a good option for the website owner to have, let's say a couple hundred or a couple thousand, or even, I don't know, it depends on the website, a couple million requests to your hosting to download an image or a file from your hosting. And once again, take into consideration that nowadays hosting, most of them are based on, I don't know, even though the website the web hosting providers tell us that the bandwidth is unlimited, but it will be limited for sure as far as you run after 1 terabyte of bandwidth.
Yeah.
So you don't do this. And we also know that the patch is resource hanger, and if a patch runs out of its database limits, it might get from the files, and it might also cause problems with the loading speed of your website. So a good idea will be just to disable it, because it's just a piece of code into a functions PHP file.
Yeah.
And you get rid of this, or into HTTP access file.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next one would be to optimize fonts. I would, once again, as a person that I would say possibly not the old school developer, because I don't consider myself as to be of, I don't know, when internet only started, but I would suggest to keep all those fonts that you have on your hosting, because once again, it depends what kind of fonts do you use. And Google is pretty fast, for example, if you use Google Fonts. But in case you use some other sources, they might be, even for the CDN, they might be not so fast. So I would suggest to self-host the fonts, because usually fonts don't need regular updates. So you just upload them and just link them to the style sheet, and it goes very well.
Yeah.
And plus you have less HTTP requests, as I mentioned previously. So
Yep.
it's one less or two less, because usually it might happen that you have 2, 3 kind of fonts on a single website. So it just will add some more loading speed to your website by hosting your fonts. And of course, there are also some tricks. If in case you don't want, you can host those fonts. You might preload those fonts, or also preconnect, just to create a faster loading speed to your website.
Yeah, it's one of the smaller wins, but it's a win. If you can achieve a tiny little bit of benefit from it, then yeah, seems like a good idea.
Okay, so the next one would be to optimize comments. To lazy load them.
Yeah, that's a good idea, especially if you've got a big, popular site with millions of comments on each thread.
Yes, and yeah, in this situation, possibly you might need some other optimization, but this one would be, because I, from my own experience as a WordPress maintenance, let's say, possibly not expert, but person that does this kind of job, I observed that even when you have, let's say, a couple of hundreds comments per day, and it creates, comments, it loads these comments, it creates loads to the database, it requests different information. Also depends on the comment. For example, I've seen comments of 2,000 words and so on. So in this situation, it might load your website and downgrade the speed of your website. So it would be an advice. As a small advice, would be better to lazy load your images.
Yeah, I just can't see a situation where that's not a good idea. If nobody wants to read the comments, then they don't need to be loaded. And if they want to keep reading the comments, it's not a big deal to wait half a second to let's see the next couple load. Yeah, I agree.
So the next one would be to use a good CDN. Why good? Because we all know that it depends on how big is the provider of the CDN. For example, I am personally from Moldova, and I found that Cloudflare has a CDN even in servers even in Moldova. So I suppose that it has in many other countries. So a good CDN, by the way, it's like content delivery network for those who hear it for the first time. This term. So it will help to make your website and to deliver your website a little bit faster, sometimes even more faster than if it would be loaded, from a hosting, for example, from a faraway country, from a couple of thousand kilometers from your place. So in this situation, and also why I like Cloudflare, and I would recommend Cloudflare to others, is in case you have a kind of a small website that you don't have dynamic datas. You don't renew daily, so there are just a couple of articles and a couple of images on the homepage. In this situation, Cloudflare would just cache all this cached already stuff, and will load even if your website doesn't work at a certain point. So it will load as copies, and it will load the cached copies. First of all, it will reduce the amount of data and CPU that your website web hosting requires. So once again, as an example, we had not a DDoS attack, but we found after that, when we paid our attention to the logs that we found on the website, some homemade hackers tried to find if there are some database files on the hosting of that website. And all those requests caused many visits to a website. And if it's a website on a shared hosting, so the owner started to receive a notification that you have too many connections at a single time, and so please do something, or we'll have to move to a higher level of hosting I don't remember. It's they proposed him to move to a dedicated hosting.
Yeah, go from very cheap to very expensive right away.
Yeah. And when we just advised them to, until they didn't have enough money to move to a higher level of hosting, they advised them to use Cloudflare. And what we found is that it reduced it drastically. So that client never experienced the same issues with the website. So that's why I would advise to use Cloudflare. And it works even not only for the small businesses, but also for big websites, because Cloudflare also have some plans for for bigger businesses.
Oh yeah, the big ones. Yeah, absolutely.
So it works not only for the small ones. So you shouldn't think, those who are hearing this podcast, that it's just for small businesses and those big businesses don't have to pay attention to this. It has to offer to each and every business.
Yeah, they've got a huge network. I have no idea what proportion of the world's internet runs through Cloudflare, but I bet it's a lot. I bet it's a huge amount. Alexander, sadly, we are sort of running out of time, so I don't know that we're going to get to the end of your list. But if it's okay with you, I'm going to mention what they all were,
sure.
And that will give you time to just talk about WP Dandy that I mentioned at the beginning, and I think it's a fair exchange. So the other ones were to simply keep an eye on the PHP version of your WordPress website. Obviously, WordPress goes back; it tries helpfully to go back really a long way back and be compatible with earlier versions of WordPress. But if your host allows it, go to the latest version of PHP. And if your host doesn't allow it, maybe move host. Clean up your database regularly was another one. That again, just a no-brainer. Get rid of all of those bits and pieces, all of those things in there that are just not needed. Tables for plugins that are not needed anymore. What about revision history that's just loitering, doing no help whatsoever? Perform regular WordPress website performance checks. Perform regular WordPress website security checks. And then the final two were implement security scenarios. That probably could have been a podcast in itself, that one. And go some way to block bad bots. Yeah, there's a few nice solutions I've come across that assist with that. Yeah, what I'll do, though, is I'll post those in the show notes, and I'll be sure to link to WP Dandy so that people, if they've been intrigued by what you've said and they want to know more, they can find you. There is, of course, a contact form on there. If you go to wpdandy.com/contact, then you'll be able to get in touch. But let's just, for a few minutes, focus on what is WP Dandy. We mentioned it at the start. What's its purpose? What is it all about?
So as a starting from the very beginning, in comparison with other developers that considered their duty to create some plugins and to share them into WordPress repository, I decided to move a little bit different way and to help people to maintain what they already have. And that's why I decided to create this website and to allow people to contact us with their problems and to get the help that they need. So in general, this is the purpose of the resource, to help, to share our knowledge with those who need help and to help them to overcome, because we all know that WordPress is a very, very good CMS, but it needs a lot of attention and it needs a lot of passion and it needs a lot of knowledge. Because, for example, I have listed only 20 most basic, I would say, optimization.
Yeah.
But when it comes to solve some particular, situations, only a team can handle this. For example, it's okay if you have created your design, your own design, create a theme or so on and so forth, but a single person can't have all the knowledge possible. For example, I would my team have around, as it is written on the website, around 100 years of experience. Personally, I work from 2009. It's already 11 years, and we also have even people that started to work with WordPress from its very beginning, when even it wasn't a PHP version content management system. Only it was just a couple of templates that would run through the internet. It would be for free. So all this makes our team and help businesses not to go out of internet, because it oftentimes happens that people just lose their passion and just don't know what to do, and they are approaching some freelancers. They help them for a very limited amount of time, and after that they remain once again face to face with their problem. And this is what WP Dandy does. It helps people to keep going with their businesses.
So it's a kind of like a maintenance service whereby you sign up. Is it? I guess it's a monthly subscription, and depending on the tier that you're on, you're entitled to a certain amount of assistance, shall we say. Do you want to just talk us through the three different pricing plans which appear on your website at the moment? You've got Starter, Advanced, and Pro. What's the difference between the lower package and the highest one?
In general, these free packages are created for, I would say, three levels of businesses. For those who just have started, it's the cheapest one is for $69. So in case you don't need support by phone, for example, you just can contact us through the contact form, and we'll respond. You also don't need too much development, because you have already developed all you have to develop. And in this situation, can opt for this one. But sometimes it happens that you need, and you know that you have a kind of website that you need to contact your developer, because in our company we provide each and single website its own developer, and it supports that website, so we don't move from one developer to another. It's continuously pays attention to your resource and works with you.
Nice.
So in this situation, you might need to to contact support by phone, and to ask for some developer, and to ask for help at a certain moment. So in this case, and you might need some small development or design or content management stuff during 1 month that won't overcome around 30 minutes per month. So in this situation, you opt for $89. So it's just a $20 difference, but you have additionally support by phone and 30 minutes. And in case you want, to get, and what I forgot is that for the $69, you get just updates for once per month. In case you order a higher level of plan, it will be twice a month, and thrice a month will be for $109. And it will be additionally 1 hour of development. It could be development, design, or some changes to, in case you need some changes to your design, some tweaks, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, nice. So a professional WordPress website maintenance company designed for, well, people who are probably in need of some support. Maybe you've got some clients who would benefit from this. You could pass them over to WP Dandy. You can find them at wpdandy.com, and the pricing that we just mentioned is at wpdandy.com/pricing. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you, Alexander. I'm sorry that we ran out of time, but thanks for joining us today, and we'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, Nathan. It was my pleasure to talk to you today and to all the audience. And of course, I also hope to have some more cooperation and podcast like this one.
Yeah. Well,
thank you for the invitation.
You're most welcome. Have a nice day. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Well, I hope that you enjoyed that episode. I certainly learnt a lot. Whether you've been using WordPress for years or you're a bit of a noob, there was tons of information in there. It was quite a long episode, but certainly worth listening to. Maybe it's one of those episodes that you have to go back to and pass in smaller chunks because there's just so much coming at you. I could have gone on with Alexandru for much longer, but we had to cut it at sort of like a reasonable length of time. But yeah, fascinating episode. Love that. Don't forget that if you want to make use of Alexandru's sort of concierge service, it's called WP Dandy. It's a 24/7 WordPress maintenance and support service. You can get 30% off that by using the coupon code WPBuilds30. There are 30 of those available, and so hopefully some of you will make use of that. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by A/B Split Test. Do you want to set up your A/B split test in record time? The new A/B split test plugin for WordPress will have you up and running in a couple of minutes. Use your existing pages and test anything against anything else. Buttons, images, headers, rows, anything. And the best part is it works with Elementor, Beaver Builder and the WordPress block editor. Check it out and get a free demo at absplittest.com. Hopefully, we'll see you again this time next week. Remember, we're back around on Monday for the WP Builds Weekly WordPress News and the live version of that as well. Check it all out at wpbuilds.com/subscribe. And I hope that you have a nice week. Stay safe. Bye-bye for now. Cheesy music coming in.